Hello YouTubers out there, this is Jerry at the Movies with your host Jerry Saravia. So rather than doing my usual fanfare, I just wanted to jump right ahead and discuss a remake that I've seen uh, and that I'm not particularly very fond of. So let's see if you can guess what this is. A fellow Uruguayan, being that I'm from Uruguay, director Fede Alvarez made the remake of Evil Dead. Now, this was a film that I was sort of looking forward to because I'd seen the teaser last year and I thought, well, it's pretty intense. It looks like it's bone chilling. And the clips they picked, I guess, doing it in a very fast paced type of editing just to give you the impression of something that is happening when in fact it may not be. That is in a trailer or teaser, as we've become accustomed to, particularly horror movies. Um, but there were some interesting shots that were shown that looked visually kind of exciting, and so I thought, well, maybe considering that Bruce Campbell helped produce this one, Bruce Campbell, of course, being the one that played Ash in the original Evil Dead pictures, there might be something to this, and he promoted the hell out of it. He said, Evil Dead fans will not be disappointed. Now, considering I'm a fan of the Evil Dead pictures, then I was prepared not to be disappointed. Prepared is the key word because it is disappointing. It's really a dull freak show is what it is. Evil Dead 2013. It's really yet again an unnecessary remake. Now the thing about Evil Dead is that it distinguished itself from the normal standard horror fare, the original films that is by Sam Raimi, the director. And they did it because they amped up the horror and the absurd with some gore, but with a tongue-in-cheek humor that made it all the more nail-bitingly intense and a little bit scary. Um, and there was something playful about them, and Raimi built the intensity with ingenuity and some really funny and horrific gags. So, and then you got Bruce Campbell as a chainsaw-wielding Ash, and there was something larger than life about him, and that grin and that face and that chin. It just felt like this was the guy that could fight these evil spirits. Well, the characters on display in this movie, which begins kind of the same way. So you have the Oldsmobile entering a deserted area in the woods where a log cabin exists, and these characters are rather wan. They're totally unappealing. Jane Levy, who is from TV's Suburgatory, plays Mia, a recovering junkie who should have gone to Dr. Drew than Raimi's barren cabin in the middle of the woods. She's there with supportive friends. One of them is a nurse. All of these characters are instantly forgettable on screen, I'm sorry to say. That includes Mia's brother, David, played by Shiloh Fernandez, who was never really quite there for his sister before. So anyway, the point is, she's going cold turkey. She's a heroin addict. They bring her to this remote cabin because they feel this is the best surroundings for somebody who's going to go cold turkey. Like I said, Dr. Drew would be better. Now, that I don't understand why they had to go to a cabin out in the middle of nowhere to do this, but I guess, okay, you go along with it. And then there's a character, wears glasses, he's a teacher, he's one of the characters, and he finds a Book of the Dead, which doesn't have that famous visage on the, on the front cover, and it unhooks all the barbed wire that's kind of keeping it shut, this book, meaning, you're not supposed to be opening this book. It's the Book of the Dead. The book tells the readers, through its writings in blood, to leave this book alone. Don't do it, MF. Is something that I remember seeing. In other words, it has all these, every page is like, don't read this, don't read this. And of course, what does the character do? He reads it. So then anyway, they find something in the basement. I'm not going to say what it is, but it would have been enough for anyone to say that they leave such a stench that maybe we should just leave this cabin. Anyway, the Book of the Dead is being read, the incantations, they bring out the evil spirits, and then you have blood literally falling from the sky, like a rain of blood. Decapitations, disembowelings, amputations, everything. This Evil Dead movie is purely sadistic torture. That's all it is. Pretty much on the order of Hostel and everything else that we've considered torture porn um, in the last 10 years. The difference is, of course, that the original Evil Dead films were never really sadistic. They were somewhat gory, but they maintained the blood flow in moderation. And here, a demon cuts its wagging tongue in half. Another chops off its own arm. Actually, it's let's just say the Evil Dead 2 gag of um, Ash's hand having to be amputated because the evil has attached itself to the hand and the hand starts having a life of its own. That gag is repeated over and over again in this movie. But rather than being a gag, which is how Bruce Campbell kind of played it, and if you recall that reference in Evil Dead 2 to a book, a famous book called A Farewell to Arms, this movie overdoes it. It overdoes it. The blood gushes everywhere and everywhere. And from orifices and so on and so forth. And of course we have the famous scene, or infamous maybe, from the original Evil Dead where the trees kind of rape, this girl, and it happens in this movie to Mia. But it's not as inventively done. None of this is scary. It's not chilling. It doesn't chill the bone. The first two Evil Dead films did that. Army of Darkness was just more of a goofy horror comedy. But the first two films, uh, they chilled you. It gave you goosebumps. Um, and it wasn't over relying on the gore. It wasn't overdone with the blood spraying from everywhere. There was that, but it wasn't overkill. In this movie, because it's a slicker Hollywood production, it is overkill like you wouldn't imagine. In fact, it's almost as bad, the gore, as Peter Jackson's Dead Alive. I don't know how many of you have seen that, from 1993, I believe. That movie, which I don't recommend, has geysers of blood, more so than probably any other movie I've seen since or before. Anyway, all you want to do is kind of like shut your eyes and shut your ears because of the bone crunching sound effects, and all this amputations is just too much. Even Mia loses her own hand, spoiler alert, when the demon overturns a vehicle and it lands on her arm. Of course it breaks. Now the only performance in this movie is from Jane Levy, which I could, and I mean that, performance in quotations, and somewhat adequate. But this movie needed Bruce Campbell to really make it work. That's what it really needed. You had to believe that there has to be someone just as nutty as the demons, and somebody you could root for. There's nobody to root for in this movie. These characters are unappealing. They're just served up as bloody entrees with no particular taste or variety, and all you get are the entrails and gallons of blood. Now, if that's your thing, and you don't care, and you just want to see a lot of blood and gore, this is the movie to see, but that doesn't make a movie. A lot of slasher films in the past have this sort of thing. Evil Dead distinguished itself beautifully, with Bruce Campbell, with the humor, and the intensity, the very idea that all this could be in his head, like a cabin fever. But this remake was totally unnecessary. Now, as a side note, apparently Fede Alvarez is doing a sequel to this movie, because it did well at the box office. And Sam Raimi is doing Army of Darkness 2, so I guess somehow those two will kind of meet somewhere in the middle. I look forward to Army of Darkness 2. I just don't look forward to a sequel by this man of this movie. It's not recommended. But if you want to see a blood freak show with a lot of blood spraying the screen consistently, and the rest of it characters who you just don't give a damn, this is the movie for you. This is Jerry the Movies with your host, Jerry Saravia, signing off.